This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, hello, this is the Board of Health, and we are here meeting today about 194 Pomeroy Meadow Road, Airbnb, and we are calling the meeting to order at 12:59 on July 31st, 2024. I'm gonna put this remote back.
Would you like me to start?
Charlie, would you like to start and give a history about the property and what we know now?
Okay. Well, my understanding, this has been operating for about a year anyways, but, you know, I could be wrong, but, you know.
Right, so that's actually not true. It operated for the month of October last year. It's closed in the winter, and it started again at the end of, or beginning of May, so May, June, until July.
All right. So we'll say it started this spring.
Yeah.
The Board of Health became aware of this and sent a letter of advisory, which is item number 1, which pretty much outlined the concerns that this may be in violation of state laws and codes. We weren't sure what to classify this as. Was this a alternative housing situation, or was this temporary housing? We asked for an inspection down there, and we had an inspection that was done on July 9th. Being Jerry, myself, and the owner walked through the property, looked it all over, took pictures and all the rest of that, and then I wrote up a report. We came to the conclusion it's what we classify under the state sanitary code as temporary housing. We also realized that it's temporary housing which is mobile or not really a permanent structure. So it can be permitted for up to 90 days, but no permits were ever applied for that. We let a little time go by, and then we issued the cease and desist order to make sure that the owner realized that we need to get this straightened out because it's hanging out there. It doesn't have any permits. We did a little further research, and if you look at item number 8, which is at the very back of the page, the Commonwealth very clearly states, and this is back in 2014, that the department has determined lodging providing Airbnb and similar online services subject to local licensures and permitting as a lodging house, so on and so forth. Now, Southampton doesn't have any lodging houses. So this is sort of new territory for us in the sense, I mean, I deal with this in other communities, but in the other communities, it's a day-to-day operation. But Southampton, this is new.
Well, Southampton does recognize bed and breakfast, however.
It does.
In the bylaws.
In the bylaws, but there's no one licensed to do it.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that there's no operation where they go to the Board of Health and get a permit to run. Just because they're in the bylaw doesn't mean that they exist.
Right, there are no bed and breakfasts, is what you're saying.
That's correct.
Right,
That we are aware of.
Right, okay. But essentially, you're saying this applies to me, and I'm not a lodging house, but I'm a bed and breakfast. Am I understanding that?
I'm thinking you're a lodging house, not a bed and breakfast.
Okay, but it says either or, right?
Right.
So either way it applies.
So, bottom line, boiling this all down, it comes down to, I believe the owner needs to apply for a temporary housing permit through an application process and apply for a lodging permit through another application process. And to make this simple, all what she needs to do is when Jerry gets back from being ill, get together with Jerry, get the application forms, get this processed. Once the application forms are submitted, then we review it, and then we make a recommendation to the board if a permit should be issued or not. That's it in its simplest form.
And how long would I mean, is there, could you had mentioned with temporary housing, it's only for 90 days, so would she have to continue to apply, or is there a way to make this standing so that that's not necessary?
This usually, in most communities, turns out to be an annual permit,
Annual, okay.
you know.
But only for 90 days
But
per
only-
year?
That's,
or is
that's
it-
the maximum, the 90 days.
Now, just from my understanding, and I know I briefly discussed this with Jerry, I was trying to understand, okay, you mentioned October and then it started back up in the spring. Does that 90-day period have to be consecutive and can it be reissued within the current year? Or does that have to, and again, this is learning for me too, so the reason I'm talking about it is so we can, you know, learn a little bit more about what the bylaws actually allow, or what the state laws
These are-
actually allow.
Right.
But say you were to rent it out in the fall, and then again when the weather got nice, which I imagine that's what your intentions are, would that be allowable within the temporary housing regulations? If it meets the minimum standard requirement for sanitary code?
Well, the regulations as they're written are general guidance for the boards of health.
Yep.
They certainly can be varied because the Board of Health has that authority to.
Yes.
I'm trying to actually find that section in this pile of paper here. So you see what this says? If you look at the temporary housing,
Yep.
that sheet here, it-
Page 3.
and if you go down to 2, this one here.
It's marked 3 on your packet, I think.
Next page.
That's right
I
there.
have a question.
It's
Okay.
right there.
If the property owner wanted it to be considered a bed and breakfast, so as I'm assuming bed and breakfast can operate for more than 90 days, is that an option? Would they have to do something different? Because at one point you mentioned that some of the language was interchangeable on page 8. Is
This
there
is-
a way that it could be a bed and breakfast
You're
and
mixing
operate for
you're
more than
mixing
90
the bed and
days?
breakfast with the temporary housing, okay? This is temporary housing. There's
So
two
there's
light-
no way it could operate as a bed and breakfast, is what I'm
Oh,
asking.
no, she doesn't have she wouldn't be providing breakfast and everything else that was down there.
Well, that's actually not entirely true. They get wrapped, you know, snacks and things like that, coffee.
From your house?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we,
I
now
mean, I don't know
it's
what you mean by from my house.
your kitchen, in your home.
You're not preparing it,
I'm not
but you're
preparing it.
giving
They're
them
purchased.
already
Right.
They're
prepared.
purchased, not-
So-
So like cereal bars, coffee pods,
All
that
right,
kind
and
of thing.
so that's not a bed and breakfast.
Bed and breakfast is you're preparing the meals in your kitchen, right?
But you have to look at this, this is temporary housing permit. The bed and breakfast and the lodging are another permit process.
Gotcha.
Right now, we're focusing on the temporary housing. You asked if it's, you know, erratic. Well, it clearly says here
90 days.
90 days, but in front of it, it says intermittent periods of time not to exceed 90 consecutive days.
But so you could rent it out for a month, someone leaves for a week, someone rents it out for a
Start all
night.
again.
Okay, so
Okay,
that's
so it's not
that's helpful.
limiting to
No.
90 days in the calendar year.
90 days is not the drop dead date.
Great.
Well, because I was gonna say, I'm like, that sounds like it would be awful restrictive for you who's trying to.
Right, to
What I-
6 months, really about 180 days
Yeah.
total, and not all the days are rented. I
And that's
suppose.
where the spaces come in, so that shouldn't be a problem.
So you just couldn't have a tenant
90
there.
consecutive days.
Right, and the reason I believe is because as soon as you get to that level, then you start moving into tenancy laws.
Correct, right.
And you don't want to be a landlord with tenancy, because then you have the whole other issues that develop.
Correct. Could I just take a step back real quick? I'm a little confused by the Department of Health versus the planning board and zoning. So it seems to me like we're talking planning and zoning, but my understanding was we were talking about the toilet facilities and public
Right.
safety. So I'm confused by what this group's role is.
This group is basically life safety, if I phrase it. We are looking to make sure that if someone is residing in that place, that they're safe. And we encompass fire codes, building codes, plumbing codes, all those go through our codes of regulation. Planning board is literally that. They are trying to plan the community out as to how it should be developed.
On the other hand, there is a function of the planning board which approves you know, A&Rs, et cetera, and they're not
Right.
planning. So in some cases, they're approving based on the bylaws, whatever the bylaws are, the zoning bylaws, the general bylaws.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's separate from them to us. The building inspector enforces the zoning regulations. I enforce the public health laws and codes.
Right, so it seems to me that the public health issue here is the sanitation facility adequate and safe? And is maybe the building adequate and safe?
The building in and of itself has to meet the minimum standards of habitation, which falls into this board's realm. And that means windows, lighting, ventilation, second means of egress, water, sewage. It means pretty much the whole building and anything involved. Do we care where it is located on the property?
Right.
No, that's not an issue with us. Do we care what it's zoned? No, that's not us either.
Okay.
So,
you were there, I guess my question is, do you see issues there? Because that has not been raised at this point.
I believe you need to go through the application process, and once you do that and you respond to us as to what you are doing to address the application, because the application will break out things like water supply, smoke detector, sewage disposal, you know, do you have contact information for the police and fire department? Does police and fire have a ready access to your property and know how to find it? Those types of things. And I bring that up because I deal with the town of Chester a lot, and they have a lot of properties like yours where they have, quote, the cabins way out in the woods, and you go down the street and those driveways aren't used enough to know that they're actually a driveway and they're not just a wood road someplace. So we make them put a house number on the end of the street so they can be found right away if there's a problem. So those are through the application process. The hearing here is to decide whether this enforcement action is modified or withdrawn or stays as it is.
Until
That's-
the application process proceeds.
Well, once the application process proceeds and a recommendation is made to issue a permit, then what would happen is the permit would issue and the cease and desist order would dissolve.
And I understand there's two permits, right? There's two permits that need to be issued.
The lodging permit, which falls under us, and what's the second piece of that?
Temporary housing, which is the 90 consecutive days.
Okay.
You're gonna have one hell of an education by the time this is over.
So really, the next step would be the permitting process.
Yeah.
And then you'd answer all the questions, we'd review it, and then determine what the next appropriate steps are, right?
So the cease and desist order is to make sure that no one is there and at risk while we're waiting
for the permit.
see all of the permitting information.
No different than when we issue a condemnation order on a house. We
Right.
find the house is unsafe,
Yeah,
okay? It's basically to protect somebody from,
right.
going in there. And it also gives us the legal mechanism to stop something if it goes on. Only because I've been watching 82 Valley Road and wondering where that's going.
Question for you, excuse me.
That's the chair.
I'm asking the chair.
Yep.
May I speak?
Yeah.
Do we have the forms that you're asking this person to go and fill out when Jerry gets back to the office? Do we have them already?
I
The
believe,
applications?
I believe she has the temporary housing permit applications already put together. Because the lodging is a new concept,
Yeah,
I'm gonna be providing her templates so that she can put it together,
okay.
which is an easy thing to
So
do.
this, as I've heard you state, is kind of new territory for the town of
The
Southampton.
lodging one is.
And I do think this idea is not new to what's happening in our world.
Mhm.
You know, we're seeing that on Airbnb. If you look on those, and I was in another town not far from here, and I saw something very similar to this around in Southampton. So what are the steps, Charlie, in your opinion, to make sure all the boards and committees know about it? The Board of Assessors as well as the Select Board, et cetera? What are you proposing for that?
Well, the application form is gonna have a sign off for the building inspector and the fire chief.
Okay, and not the police chief, because you mentioned the importance of them knowing it.
Well, I felt if the fire chief signed off on it, that'd be fine, but we can certainly add the police chief to it.
Well, I do remember when this came up at the Select Board, somebody who lived near your property did note that people were going in and out and brought it to the attention of one of the Select Board members, and this was a couple of months ago. So, and the police chief was asked, did you know about this? And he didn't at the time anyway know about it, so that was a couple of months ago.
Well, this, I mean, I have no problem
But
telling.
I think we need to, and also the Board of Assessors, because there's an assessment process as well to properties.
But that's easy to put those lines in.
Yeah, well,
just
that's
have
what I'm
them sign
asking,
off.
yeah.
I mean, we do this in reverse with building permits, where everybody signs off before a new house can go up.
Right.
But, yeah, why not?
I'm interested to hear, I know that there's been glamping bylaws or something, and I know that this is outside of the purview of the Board of Health,
Yeah.
but I'm interested to hear how that might be helpful or might apply in this type of situation to help, at least not, and I feel like I'm out of my court, but, just because it's new for us. I mean, I was looking at yurts or other similar properties, and I've looked at them to rent as well, right?
Yep.
Go camping with my
They
son.
look really good.
They look really, so, it's,
Yeah, they're fun.
right, and
People enjoy
your
them.
structure is beautiful, I love it, the A-frame is very nice, it's nothing against the property, but one other question for you, Charlie, is the running water as it applies to the current, so without any modifications to bylaws or rules, does our current regulations require running water, correct?
Our current state regulations are adjusted to fit the circumstance, and the board has to be comfortable with it. You, as the board, are the approving authority. If she said to you, don't take this wrong, but I got a 5-gallon bucket and I go down to the river and I fill it up and I give them their water, you would obviously be impressed with that and not want that to happen. But if she told you that she goes and gets a company's bottled water and puts a bubbler there,
Yes.
you'd be like, oh, okay.
Okay, right, the potable water,
Because you want to make sure that the water source is an approved source of water.
of course,
Right.
so that makes sense.
So just for the record, the way I do it now is there's a water container for hand washing that says.
Mhm,
not drinking
non-potable,
water,
yep.
Right. And then I just put out bottled water, like commercial bottled water for.
there's
like
the-
like in a hotel room, you get
This is the
a
hand
couple
washing.
bottles of
bottles
water.
of water.
Yeah.
And I imagine that would be part of the permitting process as well, right?
Right,
So
that
all
would
that
be-
information would go
would
into
be
Right,
in
your
the
the
application,
application.
yeah, right.
And her water sink, as she's got it set up, is what we would normally do at a fair or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for
Hand
food service.
washing,
Yeah.
yes.
Right.
Right.
So it's not like this is unheard of. The problem is no one has gone through the process
Right,
of,
the permit has, right.
Yeah.
Right, right, right.
and that's where we're at. Now, I can't speak for what the building inspector is gonna say and do, or the fire chief. I don't see the police chief doing anything, but anyways, because it's really not his territory. But I don't know what those other departments would do or not do. The other part to this, just to add flavor to this,
Yes.
if this works out and it gets permitted and stuff, and then you decide to do two, then you start moving into the realm of family-type campgrounds.
Okay.
And that's another regulation that we enforce. So if these things start to expand, all of a sudden it's a family-type campground, then I know that's gonna run into the zoning board.
Right.
That's not the plan, that's a.
No, no.
No, it's good to
Laying
know.
down the idea for
Yeah.
maybe somebody else.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what-
Well, I said, I'm like, once we figure this out, I can't imagine that this is going to be a unique circumstance, right? I imagine that there's going to be other times where people might be interested in doing something like this.
Also, you are right against conservation land, you know that,
Yes.
that's town conservation land. Because I was there, I have a picture of me right next to your fence, as
Oh.
I went in from the other side,
Yes.
the inside
Yeah, yeah,
area.
yeah.
It's beautiful, yeah,
So,
but lovely location. And the Conservation Commission, especially in this one, might wish to at least know about this, because also there's wetlands regulations too. I don't know how close you are to wetlands or
I don't think there's any dumping going on or anything like that.
Good.
I mean, if she has the toilet in place.
And that's actually off, that's not so much near the
Yeah,
conservation land.
the
It's-
bathroom is nowhere near any
Yeah,
wetlands.
yeah.
No.
No. But, well, with that, that's my presentation. My recommendation to the board is that we continue the order until such time that permit's issued.
Makes sense.
And what is the time frame from when I submit an application, do you know?
I would hope within 30 days. Part of the problem is I don't know how ill Jerry is, so I'm not quite sure when she's coming back. My hope is she's coming back Monday. I work as a consultant for numerous towns, so it would mean I'd be rededicating more time here to do the process for her. So I'm just sort of not sure where that's going. No.
Did you have renters already lined up for this summer?
Sure did.
Yeah, oh boy.
Sure did.
Well, need a motion.
All right, I just want to say one last thing. I think the unfortunate part is I did not go out and just do this without calling the town last year. And I did speak to someone, I think in May. I know the bylaws were all under revision at that time. And I did get a verbal, we don't have any rules regarding short-term rentals. I don't see why you can't move forward. So I just want to, for the record, say that. I did not go out there and think, sure, the town doesn't care. It was clear to me that the town might care, probably would care, and I did try to get the okay. And as far as I was concerned, I did get the okay. So when someone says yes, you're like, all right, I'm not going to call 10 other people to verify that. You're going to believe the person you spoke to. So just want to be clear that I did due diligence at the beginning of the process. I want to do it right. I want to do the permitting process.
Of course.
But it wasn't for lack of effort on my part to get the okay.
Were you ever advised that you needed to file a permit or communicate with the Board of Health?
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay, that's really unfortunate, and I agree that we should really work to educate multiple departments who may be receiving these questions, because that's, really unfortunate for you.
I really think we need the bylaws committee to become aware of this conversation, and, I mean, it's public, to inform them of this, because they're looking at general bylaws, and some of this may fall under some of the general bylaws, not just, and also this whole communication process is important.
The
for our town. We're
communication-
not that big, why do we have to not
The
have good
communication process is always with all these communities, because I deal with a lot of
Yeah,
communities.
yeah.
I see this all the time. And I've seen it with the Commonwealth. People would call the Commonwealth, ask the person that answered the phone X, Y, and Z. They get told an answer, not knowing that the person that answers the phone is from a temp agency and doesn't have a clue, just telling them what they think.
But when we get a person who's a new town resident, who's doing the best, as I hear it, to comply and you don't know who you spoke to, Rebecca, or you prefer to say.
No, I don't know for sure who I
Okay,
spoke
sure.
to.
Fair enough.
It was a
Yeah.
phone call, I don't remember.
Okay, and this was about a year ago?
This was probably in the month of May, because I was looking at purchasing a structure, and I wanted to make sure that it was okay with the town, and that the structure, didn't need permitting. I was told that anything under 200 square feet did not need a building permit, so, apparently that bit of it is true.
You don't need a building permit.
Right.
And I'd be interested to hear how that works with a secondary structure on a property, right? That would apply to zoning as
I
well,
would think so, yeah.
right? So to have a
That's
second,
true.
or like you said, the assessors.
Well, like, the assessors are interested in when somebody puts in a shed, or a
Right.
pool, or something else, not your structure, but something similar. And we need to they call that new growth, that's what it's called, I'm learning all these things myself, in order to fairly tax an individual and fairly along everybody, and everybody should be taxed equally on whatever their structures are. So all that needs to be understood.
Okay, so I will request a motion to continue the cease and desist order until the permitting process has been completed and reviewed, correct? So this would be, the permit would be
Completed,
reviewed and issued, the permit would be issued.
Yeah.
But the first step would be completing the permit so that it can be reviewed by yourself and Jerry, and then brought forward before the board.
Do I file these simultaneously?
Sure,
Okay.
put it all
And the
together.
temporary housing permit is available, the forms are available online, or you're
No,
gonna
but-
provide those to me?
Jerry has them, I don't have them, I don't have access because I'm a consultant, so I would say Monday.
And I can we'll follow up with Jerry just to say this is the outcome of the, we anticipated that this would be the outcome of the discussion. We really would like to move this along as expeditiously as possible, recognizing that you did have renters lined up, and
Yeah.
I imagine that's a hardship for you and them.
And then, yes, I've been contacting them.
Okay,
And
I'll
then I'm
make a
doing an
motion.
Airbnb rental next week, and if that happened to me, I'd be like,
You'd be really bummed, yes.
I'll make a motion to continue the cease and desist as written on July 16th until such time that the permit application is received, reviewed, and permitted.
I can second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I think we figured out how to move this along as reasonably quickly as we can.
I will fill out the forms as soon as I get them.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. We Jerry will be back on
we
the
get those
Try to
online
expedite
eventually
things
once
on my
these are all
end.
finalized.
You need to talk to Jerry and the board, I haven't
I'm
done that.
talking to the board now.
Oh,
Well, I
okay.
mean, of course, this is the first,
What
We're
was the
learning.
question?
We're
I
learning.
didn't hear a question.
Can we-
the
can we
forms
get
could
these
be
forms
posted online.
eventually?
Oh, yeah, we definitely should,
Yeah.
yeah, once we
Yeah.
have, now these set up in place, then we can.
This is what happens when you're number one. You just
I know,
start
as I say,
off
the
as
challenge is
just-
you're the first person, and this is like an emerging process with the state and the changing regulations, so it's like many layers of complexity. That's unfortunate.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so next step will be that you'll be in touch with Jerry hopefully on Monday, and we'll get the ball rolling.
All right.
Do you have a motion to end the hearing?
Yes, I'd like to take a motion to end the hearing.
Motion to close the hearing at 1:25.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.